I don't know where we are. Everything looks wrong. Those were among the final radio messages received from Flight 19. Then, silence. On the afternoon of December 5th, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy aircraft disappeared over the Atlantic Ocean during what should have been a routine training mission. 14 men were on board. None of them ever returned. Despite one of the largest search operations in U.S. Navy history, no confirmed wreckage of Flight 19 has ever been recovered. For decades, the disappearance has been linked to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. But does the historical evidence actually support that conclusion? Or is the truth far more ordinary, and perhaps even more unsettling? To answer that question, we have to go back to where it all began.
December 5th, 1945. At approximately 2:10 in the afternoon, 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lifted off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Collectively, they were known as Flight 19. Their assignment was straightforward: fly east over the Atlantic, complete a navigation exercise, return safely to base. It was a routine training mission that had been flown many times before. The aircraft were battle-tested veterans of World War II, strong, reliable, built to withstand combat. Leading the formation was Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, an experienced naval aviator with extensive combat experience in the Pacific. Although he was unfamiliar with this particular training route, there was little reason to question his ability. The weather forecast was generally favorable. Visibility was good. Only isolated rain showers were expected later in the day. From every indication, it was an ordinary afternoon. Nothing suggested these 5 aircraft were about to become one of aviation's greatest mysteries.
For nearly an hour, everything unfolded according to plan. The bombing exercise was completed successfully. Then, ground controllers received an unexpected radio transmission. Lieutenant Taylor sounded uncertain. According to the surviving radio records, he reported that he could no longer determine his position. More concerning still, he believed both of his compasses were no longer giving reliable readings. Over open water, a compass is more than just another instrument. It is your primary reference. Without it, every direction can begin to look the same. Water, sky, clouds.
An endless horizon with almost no visual landmarks. Taylor became convinced the formation was somewhere near the Florida Keys. If he was correct, one course would lead everyone safely home. If he was mistaken, that same decision could carry the entire formation farther into the Atlantic Ocean. And at that moment, no one yet realized which possibility was true.
By now, the confusion had spread beyond Lieutenant Taylor's cockpit. The mission was no longer about completing a training exercise. It had become a desperate attempt to answer a single question: where are we? Controllers on the ground repeatedly instructed Flight 19 to turn west. Over the Atlantic, flying west should eventually bring the aircraft back to the Florida coastline. But Taylor hesitated. Based on what he believed he was seeing, turning west seemed like the wrong decision. He was convinced the formation had drifted south of Florida. If that assessment had been correct, turning west could have taken them even farther away from land. Other pilots began offering different opinions over the radio.
Some believed they were much farther east than Taylor thought. One pilot suggested that everyone should simply fly west. If they were over the Atlantic, Florida had to be somewhere in that direction. But uncertainty had already taken hold. Each conflicting opinion made the next decision even more difficult. Without a trusted compass, and without recognizable landmarks, every minute increased the risk of becoming even more disoriented. As the afternoon wore on, the sun slowly sank toward the horizon. Fuel was steadily running out, and Flight 19 was still searching for home.
As daylight faded, radio communications became increasingly difficult. The transmissions were weak, broken, often interrupted by static. Controllers continued trying to determine Flight 19's position, but each new message raised more questions than answers. The pilots were no longer certain which direction they were flying. They could no longer agree on where they were. As darkness approached, fuel became the next concern. Each TBM Avenger carried enough fuel for a routine training mission, not for hours of searching over open water.
The final recorded communications suggested growing uncertainty rather than panic. There was no confirmed mayday, no report of an explosion, no indication of enemy activity, only a gradual loss of contact. Then, the voices disappeared. 5 aircraft, 14 men. No confirmed location. No confirmed crash site. Only silence stretching across the Atlantic. For the families waiting back in Florida, the longest night had just begun.
The search crews eventually returned home, empty-handed. Days of searching across the Atlantic had produced no confirmed wreckage, no life rafts, no survivors, no answers. But while the search was over, the investigation was only beginning. Without the aircraft themselves, Navy investigators had to reconstruct the final hours using the evidence that remained. Radio transmissions, weather reports, navigation records, maintenance logs, and the testimony of those who had listened to Flight 19's final communications. As they compared every piece of evidence, one possibility gradually became more convincing. Lieutenant Charles Taylor may have misidentified his location.
Many historians believe he mistook the islands north of the Bahamas for the Florida Keys. If that happened, every decision that followed was based on a false assumption. Instead of flying back toward Florida, the formation may have continued farther into the Atlantic. As daylight disappeared, fuel reserves continued to fall. Sooner or later, the aircraft would have faced an impossible choice: attempt a nighttime ditching on rough open water, or continue flying until the engines ran dry. Neither option offered much chance of survival. It isn't a dramatic explanation, but after decades of investigation, it remains the conclusion most strongly supported by the available evidence.
Yet for many people, that explanation was never enough. Over the years, Flight 19 became inseparable from one of the world's most famous legends, the Bermuda Triangle. Books, television specials, and countless documentaries suggested that an unknown force had swallowed the aircraft without a trace. It is a compelling story, but the historical record tells a more careful one. The phrase Bermuda Triangle did not become widely known until years after Flight 19 disappeared. As more disappearances were linked together in popular culture, Flight 19 gradually became the legend's most famous chapter. The evidence, however, points in a different direction. There is no verified proof of supernatural forces, no confirmed evidence of unusual magnetic anomalies causing the disappearance, and no credible investigation has concluded that the Bermuda Triangle itself was responsible. What investigators found instead was something far more familiar.
An experienced flight leader, uncertain of his position. A formation struggling to agree on a course. Failing daylight, declining fuel, and a vast ocean where even today, recovering wreckage can be extraordinarily difficult. Sometimes, history creates mysteries. Other times, people create myths to explain them. Flight 19 may forever remain an unsolved case, but that does not mean every explanation carries the same weight. The strongest conclusions are still the ones supported by evidence.
Nearly 80 years have passed since Flight 19 vanished into the Atlantic. Researchers continue to examine the evidence. Explorers continue searching beneath the waves. And historians continue asking the same question. What really happened that afternoon? Perhaps one day, new discoveries will reveal the final resting place of Flight 19. Or perhaps the Atlantic will keep that answer forever. History doesn't always give us certainty. Sometimes, it leaves us with only the evidence and the responsibility to follow it wherever it leads. Flight 19 is remembered not because it proved the legend of the Bermuda Triangle.
It is remembered because it reminds us how quickly an ordinary mission can become an extraordinary mystery. 14 men took off expecting to return home. Instead, they became part of a story that still challenges historians nearly 8 decades later. And until the Atlantic gives up its secrets, Flight 19 will remain one of aviation's greatest unsolved mysteries. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy documentaries that separate historical evidence from popular legend, subscribe to History Mystery for more investigations into the world's greatest historical mysteries. Because history deserves to be explored, one piece of evidence at a time.